We all know the engineer, right? The guy from TF2 who is the shortest of them all, wears a hard hat and is bald. Yeah, that guy. He has a lot of weapons, 14 to be exact if you ain't including reskins, or 15 if you want to include the sentry gun. Anyways, I have nothing better to do, so I'm gonna rank them all. I ain't gonna be ranking them out of 10 though, because that's boring. Instead, I'm gonna be ranking them on how effective they are in both defense and offense. I'm gonna split this video up into 3 sections: primary, secondary, and melee weapons. I'm just gonna say this stuff here, just because a weapon is rated low doesn't mean it's bad. There's only one bad engineer weapon and it's pretty obvious what it is. For battle engineer, everything that's rated for offense is pretty much also rated for that. I'm just using defense and offense as a general term. Lastly, I'd like to hear what your ratings would be, so put them down in the comments. Anyways, let's begin. Let's start with the Thompson 6000 just to get it over and done with. But first, look, I've tried getting footage for this weapon, but I just couldn't do it. I'm sorry. Instead, I put the Thompson view model over random gameplay. It's funnier that way. Yeah, this weapon is just terrible. You know how the Wrangler is called the engineer's best weapon? Well, this is the engineer's worst weapon, and that title isn't even subjective either. It's actual fact. It's funny, the upsides are good. It has unlimited ammo. You can drain the cloak and uber meter of spies and medics, and the projectile itself can't even be deflected. With all those upsides, you'd expect it to be at least somewhat decent, but it just isn't. The thing that I and other people have with the Thompson is that it's just hard to use. The projectile itself is slow enough that unless somebody is walking in a straight line, you can hardly hit anyone with it. And even then, at least with any other weapon, you can at least chip people from far away, but with the Thompson it's near impossible to hit anybody, even up close. You've got to predict like 50 years ahead just to hit your target. I know, I just suck with it, and that if I used it more, I'd get good at it, but no. I refuse. Also, I might as well mention that the only listed downside is that it deals 20% less damage to buildings, but whatever, who gives one, just use your melee. If you're gonna use a projectile based weapon, just use the Rescue Ranger. It's better in literally every way. I want to like this weapon, I really do, but this weapon is just terrible, and with how TF2 is nowadays, that's never gonna change, and that just sucks. Yeah, this is going at the bottom of the list for both offense and defense. I ain't using letter grades for this, but if I was, this would be a super F. Now, let's talk about that other projectile-based engineer primary, the Rescue Ranger. Now, technically speaking, this ain't a weapon, it's more of a tool. Now yeah, it is a shotgun, and you can shoot and kill people with it, but that isn't its primary purpose. Its purpose is to let engineer be more free with his building placements, being able to heal from afar, and also break reality by being able to pick up your buildings from pretty much anywhere. Seriously, if he could, Engie could probably pick up a sentry gun from the moon. Lastly, it's a decent spy checker too. I have more about that in my Counter Spy video, you should go watch that. Another thing which is pretty cool is that in conjunction with the Wrangler, you're able to get your buildings in really unorthodox spots. Some of those spots are pretty effective too. Now, how would I rate it? Well, for defense, it's at the number 1 spot. Come on, it's pretty obvious why. Defense Engie, especially on payload, is just 100% better with the Rescue Ranger. Like I said earlier, it lets you be free. You can actually roam around and do stuff and not be a turtle. It also guarantees your safety because you can heal things from afar, meaning you won't get shot and killed just because you want to heal a building. On the other hand, for offense, it's second to last. Yeah, on payload and attack defend, a blue engineer is just more weaker, especially at the start. So he needs more firepower just to defend himself. Also with battle engineer, you're more of a scout, so using a gun that's designed for healing and hauling your buildings and not killing isn't the best idea, is it? Next up we have the Frontier Justice. I love this weapon. I don't use it much, but I still love it. No matter what class you are, guaranteed critical hits are awesome. Who cares if this weapon only has half the ammo count? Anyways, there's not really much I can say about this gun, stat-wise anyway. When it comes to how it looks physically though, it's a lot more interesting than stock, especially when it's Australian. Also, the low pitched sound when you shoot this thing sounds pretty good too. Rating wise, for defense, I'd put this in the middle. I feel like a defense Engie is more likely to get kills with the sentry just because it's defending places where blue has to go, and it's the opposite for offense. Talking about offense, the Frontier Justice comes second. You'll understand why later. On blue, the usefulness of the Frontier Justice really just depends on how aggressive the enemy team is. And I guess it's the same if the teams are switched, but either way, it's just less likely you're gonna get kills with the sentry gun on offense. At least with defense, the sentry gun is most likely already up, especially at the start of the round, so it's more likely to get kills. Now next up, I'm just gonna talk about these three in the same section, just because of how similar they are. I want about the shotgun, Widowmaker, and panic attack. There's not really much I can say about these three other than the fact that they're good. Though I can say this, there's really no point in using the panic attack on servers like Uncletopia because random bullet spread is disabled there. You're better off using stock on those servers. And with the Widowmaker, that just depends on if you're good with aiming or not, as it's literally just a stock shotgun that can shoot forever without reloading as long as you hit most of your shots. If you're not confident with your aim, just use stock, which like most of the stock weapons, it's an all around good weapon. Let's rate them. For defense, I'd put the stock shotgun and the panic attack in second place. They're really good for defending yourself when you don't have your sentry gun up, and it's pretty good at fending off against spies as well. And in the Widowmaker's case, I'm gonna have to put this second to last. The Widowmaker is meant to be aggressive. A defensive NG, for the most part, is not. Also, on defense, your buildings are more important than killing people, so it's better off using your metal on them and not enemy players. For offense, you know how I said the Frontier Justice comes second? Well, here's why. All three of these weapons occupy the number 1 slot, and it's pretty obvious why. These three weapons are all interchangeable, and like I said earlier, all three of them are really similar to one another. At this point, it's literally just up to your own personal preference, and also your skill level somewhat. But yeah, that's my list for the primary weapons. Here it is again. This will show up at the end of the video. Moving on. This is the shortest section. There's only 3 unique engineer secondaries, the rest of them are just reskins. I wish we had more unique NG secondaries, but whatever. Anyways, for this section I'm going to talk about all the weapons first and then rank them last, because why not? First up we have the Wrangler. Being able to manually control your sentry gun is great. Being able to kill people outside your sentry's usual range is great. Being able to tank more damage with your sentry gun is great. The sentry being disabled for 3 seconds after you use the Wrangler is understandable. Onto the short circuit, this is my favourite secondary. I love being able to shut down soldiers and demo men. And also being able to spam the short circuit because of the payload cart is just simply broken and I love that. The only thing that I don't like about it is its primary fire. When does that exist? And finally onto the pistol. It's good reliable damage, and it works well with the Rescue Ranger. That's all I can say about it. Now on to rating these three. For defense, it goes Wrangler, Pistol, and Short Circuit. The Wrangler is broken. I'm not going to talk about it much because the Wrangler has been talked about to death, but I'll say this. Although it's not necessary on defense, it's almost completely recommended to use it. It's also just really good. With the pistol, like I said, good reliable damage and it works well with every weapon. And with the short circuit, well I haven't really found much of a use for it unfortunately. The other two are just better to run on defense. And onto offense, the short circuit and pistol are tied first. With this it depends on the game mode, the enemy team, and what primary and melee you're also running. The Wrangler is second but technically last. Like the short circuit on defense, I haven't found much of a use for the Wrangler on offense. Anyways, here's my list again. It'll show it one last time at the end of the video along with the primaries and melee weapons. Now on to the final section. Now we're on to the melee weapons. Let's start out with something simple, the stock wrench. It's decent, but compared to literally any other wrench, it just doesn't have much going on with it. It's kinda boring. It's the best wrench in MVM, but in the main game, it's okay. Now I can say that it is pretty good when you've got everything built up and you don't need to go back to spawn, so pretty much just at the last point. Like I said, it's a good wrench and it's also the best Australian in the game, but there's not really much going on with it. How would I rate it? Well, I hate to say it, but on defense it's second to last, and with offense it's at last place. I'm sorry, but literally every other wrench is just better in at least some capacity. There's not really much I can say about it, which is a shame. Up next is the Southern Hospitality. Believe it or not, this is a direct upgrade from stock. For instance, this is the only instance because it's the only upside, but you can make people bleed. You can't do that with the stock wrench, can you? I understand that the stock wrench is able to random crit and this wrench can't, but having random crits isn't a factor to why a weapon is good or not. Anyways, you can turn random crits off, you can't turn bleed damage off. This is the wrench you pull out when you have too many spies in the enemy team. Oh, also having this wrench equipped makes you weaker to all forms of fire damage for some reason. I don't understand why. What does this wrench have to do with fire? I genuinely believe that they added this just to make it feel like it's side grade to stock. Yeah, direct upgrade from stock, but nobody uses it because it's just better options. And also the upside is just very niche anyways. How would I rate it? Well, for both offense and defense, I'd put it just above the stock wrench. So for defense, it's in the middle, and for offense, it's second to last. Why? Literally just because it's a slightly better wrench. That is it. That's the reason. Being able to make people bleed is funny, especially spies. Now on to probably my favourite melee weapon for Engineer. The Gunslinger is awesome. For one, I love being able to not worry about a sentry gun and instead put more attention to buildings that matter for the team more. I'd say that I'm a battle engine main just because I find it more fun to play. It just makes me feel more free, I guess, and the Gunslinger synergizes perfectly with that. Now, why don't I play Scout at that point? Scout's boring. And also the Gunslinger gives you more health, so the Engineer is just superior. And also, because the mini sentry is cheap and disposable, you can use one as a distraction if you're trying to retreat from the enemy, because I've noticed that a lot of the time when you put a mini down, players seem to put their attention to that instead, which helps a lot. The 3-hit crit mechanic is also pretty good too, but it's really niche. Now it's the time to rate it. Starting with offense this time, I'd put the Gunslinger at the top spot. Being on offense is a lot more dangerous, or at least it feels like it. So the extra health and the ability to be more free, it helps quite a lot. Also on offense, your buildings are just going to go down more, so having a cheaper, more disposable sentry that builds up quicker, in my opinion, is great. The sentry is the least important building when it comes to offense in my opinion, so being able to focus on dispensers and teleporters more helps the team out a lot. On the other hand, the Gunslinger and the Battle Engineer playstyle in general just doesn't work as well on defense, especially if you're the only Engie. It's a little bit better if you're the second Engineer though. Yeah, it pains me to say this, but the Gunslinger in defense goes at the bottom of the list. The leveled sentry gun just works better on defense because a defensive Engineer is supposed to be more passive. The Gunslinger works well on offense because his job of area denial doesn't come into play as much. He has less area to deny because his team are the ones pushing into the area that needs to be denied. I hope you understand what I'm saying here. Moving on, let's talk about the Jag. This and the Eureka effect, which I'll be talking about next, don't worry, is the sole reason why the stock wrench is rated so low on both lists. The Jag might be weaker to pretty much everything compared to stock, but the speed of the Jag just makes up for it. Like your sentry could be destroyed, and if you're lucky with metal, you could have it back up to at least level 2 within like 10 seconds. A couple of seconds doesn't feel like that much, but it certainly makes a difference in game. When it comes to rating, for defense I'd rate this at number 1, the top spot, for pretty much everything I've just said. Engie's job of area denial just becomes a lot easier when you can get a sentry gun up in like 3 seconds. And for offense, I'm putting this at second place. It's honestly a decent alternative melee for the Battle Engie playstyle. Seriously, a Jag boosted sentry builds up at the same speed as a non-boosted mini sentry. The reason this isn't tied with the Gunslinger though is because sentry guns are expensive. Even though a level 1 sentry gun is more powerful than a mini, the cost of it is just too much. Finally, the Eureka effect. Now, you know how I said that the Gunslinger is my favourite melee weapon for Engineer? This comes at a very, very, very close second. I can say without a doubt that this is my favourite wrench. The Gunslinger is not a wrench, it is a hand. The Eureka effect is like the Southern Hospitality in the sense that it's a direct upgrade from stock, but this time the upsides and downsides actually matter. Yeah, you get less metal from pickups and stuff, but you're able to teleport the spawn wherever you like, which has an infinite metal supply. Being able to teleport your exit as well is also very helpful. Having your teleporters cost less to build and upgrade is the best thing since sliced bread. With every other wrench, you have to spend 50 metal and then an extra 400 metal to get your tele up to level 3. And with the Eureka effect, it's cut in half, so 25 metal to build and 200 metal to upgrade to level 3. Now, rating wise, this shares the top spot with the Jag. Both of these wrenches are pretty good in a majority of situations, and also the Jag effect rollout exists. If you don't know what that is, look it up. And for offense, it's also tied with the Jag in second place. What can I say, both of these wrenches are just excellent. Whichever one you use is just personal preference, and also situational reasons. Well, here's my list for the melee weapons, and here's all the lists at once. I'll give you a second to look at them, feel free to pause if you need to. I had a lot of fun making this. I'm glad I was able to make it. Like I said at the start, I want to hear your list, so if you want, comment down your list. It's most likely that I'll read it. Anyways, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you later. Goodbye.